NFTs, Web3, the Metaverse. Maybe you know about all this emerging digital technology, or maybe you're just a little bit confused. Well, today we've brought in the experts, and they are going to explain it all. I want to learn how this technology works, and more importantly, how brands and retailers are using it today. This week, we're talking about the metaverse and NFTs for retailers and brands. Right now, on everything we know about retail. This is the show where we tell all of you everything we know about retail, and we do it live most Thursdays on YouTube, LinkedIn, and several other streaming places. My name is James Cook. I am coming to you from Indiana. We broadcast live on the internet most Thursdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, but you don't have to be here live. You can watch us whenever you want on YouTube if you go to everythingweknow.show. So that's us. That's the website. It's time to welcome our two guests. First, we've got Camren Daly. Camren is a VP of Technology in the Metaverse studio at Globant, and she's joining us today from Seattle, Washington. Welcome, Camren.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
This is really cool. I love your office there. It's exactly how I would imagine somebody who works in the metaverse, like what your home office is like. And then we've got Nelly Ortiz. Nelly leads the U.S. Business Hacking Studio at Globant. Now, Nelly, you're joining us today from Cartagena, Colombia.
Yes, I've been traveling a lot, actually. I think these past months have been crazy how we went from like only Zoom calls to, traveling and meeting clients. I'm normally between Miami and New York City, but these days I'm going to all the Globant offices and meeting different clients. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, travel's really starting to ramp up again for me as well. It's been kind of a whiplash. Okay, before we get into the metaverse, first question is Globant. It's a software company. Explain what Globant does.
Yeah, so Globant is a company that enables transformations in companies. So whenever they encounter they need to transform, they need to build something new, they need to bring in a technology that they don't know much about and bring it inside of their company. That is where Globant steps in and helps. We digitally transform companies. We help them understand. In this particular instance, where my expertise is the metaverse. So how would a company, how would a brand leverage the metaverse to enable new experiences, to find new customers, to accelerate their growth? We help answer those questions for clients and for brands and for industries.
I love it. So the Metaverse Studio is kind of like the business group within Globant, fully focused on Metaverse solutions.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So we've, the Metaverse has become a buzzword in some ways recently, and pulling apart what is the real utility, what is the real value to companies that they can grab onto right now, and what are the plans that they can build so they're ready for a future metaverse is really where we help. We build out plans, we build out the execution, we build out real virtual worlds for companies. So we really run the gamut. We're helping companies prepare and engage with this new technology.
I love it. And we're probably going to do some of that today, answer some of those questions.
We are.
So Nelly, you lead the Business Hacking Studio. That sounds a little nefarious. What does that mean? Hacking.
I love weird names, by the way. I feel like that's kind of one of the things that I look for in my next jobs all the time. It's like, what can be a little bit of like, because it's memorable, right? If you just go from consulting, it's like everyone can do consulting. But what makes it different really is that I love the word hacking, because hacking is really about thinking the most efficient ways to do things differently. And like, if you think about processes, if you think about business, if you think about revenues, the status quo cannot be that. Like, we cannot think about the things that we've done the past 10 years, especially when we talk about something like the metaverse, and we talk about metanomics and the economies that these are bringing and how we interact differently with people and humans, now our avatars. And it's a whole different concept. So what I think we do differently than like probably a typical consulting practice, which is what people can see us maybe inside Globant, is that we really want to hack the gap between business and technology, where we have digital in our DNA. And when we actually tell you this is what you could do, we know that we can build that for you. So it's not that we're going to give you a deck of like, 1,000 slides, and then you need to figure out how to build that. Is that we say we trust that so much that like we tell you how long it's going to take you to build it, and then we'll build it for you. So we are very tangible in the way that we see strategy. And then we actually start thinking and playing and prototyping and testing with users like right away. That's kind of our mindset. And that's why I love what I do.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into it. So I was sort of teasing this when I was posting this on LinkedIn. I said, we're going to literally go into the metaverse. Now, that's a little disingenuous because there is no one place to go. But Camren, take us somewhere in the metaverse. Where can you take us?
All right, let's go on a little trip. All right, so you should be able to see my screen.
Yeah, right. There
Awesome.
you go.
Okay, so this is a metaverse platform called Decentraland. And as you can see, Decentraland is a 3D world. It's populated by a bunch of random people who are also in this world. And it's a decentralized metaverse platform. So decentralized meaning built on the blockchain, and we'll talk more about that later. But inside of this metaverse, you have a bunch of experiences that are built by the Decentraland team, but also you have, let's see if I can find a map here. You have all of these digital land that exists inside of here that are sold to individuals and to private groups to build out unique experiences. So just real quick, we'll just jump into one of the more popular ones right now in Decentraland called Ice Poker. So Ice Poker is, as you can guess, it's a poker-based game, and you can see all these little dots here. It's very, very popular. There are lots of folks here. This experience was built out not by Decentraland, but by a company called Decentral Games. And so they've built a tiny little metaverse economy inside on their plot of land, or their plots of land, because they own a few.
So you can buy land and then develop your own whatever experiences within that land.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a great example. And because it's so popular, it takes a little bit for it to fully load. These are some of the limitations right now of a true metaverse. Being that, there's a lot of people here, a lot of network traffic needs to be managed. And so it takes a little bit for people to pop in. But effectively, it's a little world inside of a larger metaverse. It has its own economy, its own token on the blockchain, and people come here to play. And they hang out with their friends and they chat. And
the token isn't specific just to Decentraland. It's actually specific to this individual game.
That's correct. This individual, collection of experiences that they've chosen to opt into, as well as NFTs that enable certain experiences just in this space.
And is that token the same as a cryptocurrency, or is it different?
So cryptocurrencies tend to be the native currency that backs a blockchain, and tokens tend to be built on top of that. So tokens exist in a blockchain that's backed by Ethereum in this case. And they can have their own value set by supply and demand, the amount of token that exists, and how many people are using it. What's the actual utility of that token?
So we're walking around here. This is Ice Poker. So those are. Hold on. I'm going to blow up my screen here. Those poker tables that you're running around?
They are poker tables, but there's so many people playing right now that it's taking such a long time for folks to load. But yeah, there are people standing around this poker table that are playing. Let's see. Let's go to a place that's a little less busy and maybe a little bit more relevant. So we can jump over to the. There was a real estate office which I went to, and it was a little bit uninteresting.
What? Uninteresting? A real estate office?
You want to go see the real estate office?
No. Let's go to. Is there something retail we could go to?
Yeah, let's go to. This looks like it's the retail district. So there's a retail street. Send me here.
It's kind of like if you want to go shopping in the metaverse, you go to the street and there's districts.
Yes.
And they're being trying to organize, which is interesting because I feel like every platform has a different, architecture, and then they're trying to make decisions that make sense for people. And I think right now you see the evolution kind of trying to copying the real world in a way, because that's how humans kind of maybe evolve into new technologies and new trends. But I have a feeling, and then we discussed this with Cameron too, like these might look completely different in just like a year. Like
Yeah.
things will go even crazier because people want to do things that are not real. It doesn't look real.
Yeah, what you ran through kind of reminded me a little bit of like Rodeo Drive, just a little bit, that one
Yeah.
section right there. So I can see where people are saying, oh, we want to recreate a retail district that looks like retail districts we know in the real world.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that, that's typically the way that technology progresses is you need to find the middle ground between where people are and what the future is going to be, and recreating some of the experiences that they're familiar with can help bridge that divide. So this is Fashion Street, I believe, inside of Decentraland. A bunch of brands have purchased land and built their own experiences across here, and a lot of them are using it to place their NFTs, or as you saw here before it popped in, sell NFTs of their clothing. So whenever they have a design that they have in the real world, they may replicate it in the metaverse world for purchase. And from here, you could purchase digital NFTs of your favorite brands.
And if I buy, say, a digital version of a piece of clothing, is that then like I can wear that on my avatar right here?
That's
Yes.
the idea.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's functionality on some of this. This is what we call skins. So skins is something that anything that you can wear, and then there's different types of skins. Some brands, and this is where it gets different, right? Like we really try to look for utility with Camren when we all talk about like our brands that try to get into the metaverse. We really try to figure it out. Okay, what's can be utilized, and how can we monetize this instead of just going with the fad and do something and say that you're in the metaverse, but really have no utility. So some of them go, for example, where just like, I want to do a collection on NFTs, and that could be in a marketplace where you can sell it, buy it, and then it's almost like tradable, like art or collectibles. That's what people always think when they think about NFTs. But if you think about the future of NFTs and how can it be utilized, ideally is something like this, where you can actually, it has a function, or you can wear it, or you can do something with it. When we were thinking with a client before, it's a client that really wanted to kind of recreate Vegas and do something very cool in terms of experience in the metaverse. We were thinking of crazy things, because if you go to Vegas, you want to go a little bit crazy. So
Yeah.
what are the crazy things that you could do? Maybe you can mount a lion and drive it. So those are called mounts. Like you can actually maybe have, I don't know, like a shoe that make you go very, very fast or start flying. So the utility becomes something even more like a spectacle, like something that is cool, and it's like is unique for me, that my avatar can fly because I have these wings, instead of just something that I wear and people just look at it.
Yep. And I think the experiences is important, because if you look at like this experience of Fashion Street and Decentraland, it's not very populated. There aren't a lot of people here running around doing shopping. And that's because the utility of the experience that some of these brands have created is not very high. There's no games to be played here. There's no experience that drives people back. Really, it's, do you want to come here and look at something digitally and see if you want it for your avatar? And so really, when you're thinking about getting into these spaces, thought needs to be put into what is going to be the experience of your players, not just when you first launch, but months later after the hype of the original event is over.
Mm-hmm.
I want to emphasize that word utility, because that seems to be the thing now, is and am I right in saying that's the value that you get? It's not just like, oh, I own this whatever digital trading card, but here's what I get out of it. I can play a game. I get exclusive access to a digital something or other. Are there real world utilities? Like, can I get something in the physical world from owning things?
Yes. And I actually would compare with anything that you own right now. Like, if kind of like if you give a new cell phone with all the gadgets to your grandfather and he doesn't know how to use it, what is the utility in that one? So I really want people to think about the user. So who are you building this experience for, or who are you building a world for, and why? What are they going to do with it? Are they going to be excited? Are they going to be engaged? Are they going to be using this? So there are certain NFTs that kind of unlock real life experiences. Like you can unlock by buying an NFT, let's say on Nike, you probably can have like the Nike pair of shoes also, or Gucci. Gucci actually did that where you have like a pair, like a bag that was digital, and then you can have the real bag also. But you can even think more than that. Think about, you have a token that is just unique and it's just for you. What if you can unlock a door in a hotel with that, or unlock a concert, an experience, you can unlock so many things in the real world with just having a token that is unique to you and it has a value. So I want brands to think about all the opportunities that this could bring, that is not just a digital item that people don't know where to store. Because I feel like that's kind of the misconception. It's like, so what do I do with it? Do you just put it there and online and maybe just take a screenshot of it and put it in my Twitter account? It's like, I'm cool and I have an NFT. No, ideally, like brands start thinking about smart ways of how do you apply this technology to something bigger and greater, and think about the user and like, how do they think and benefit with this? And then like, especially these new generations, which they really value digital world almost the same as our real life world. It's insane how the value, the perception of like an avatar and the life someone digitally is the same for them as the life of someone in the real world. Just that perception is crazy to me, that like brands can utilize and monetize on it if they're smart about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, as we've been talking, folks have been watching. I want to highlight some of the comments. Tyler says Cam and Nelly are the best. Yeah, we know it. I'm learning so much right now. Fabrizio says, this is so interesting. Totally agree. Good comment here from Mariano. Maybe people will visit these places when utility comes to real life. The utility comes to real life. Okay, interesting point. So we're in one place in the metaverse, Decentraland, which itself has all these different things in it. Maybe we take a step back for a second and kind of talk big picture. Nelly, does that sound good?
Yes, definitely. I have one slide that I like to show when I talk about all these concepts. I know it could be very abstract. So I
Yeah.
just want to bring it into to talk about how all of these buzzwords connect, and
Okay.
why is it important for us to talk about these things. So let me share my screen very quickly. Perfect. So
All right, there we go.
Great. Very quickly, getting a call and everything. So here, Web3. What is Web3? The easiest way to explain it is like all these technologies and trends that are enabling the third generation of the internet. We know Web 1 was very static. You can only see, you couldn't interact with it. Web 2 was more like, the Facebooks of the world, the Googles of the world, where there are centralized companies owning certain experiences for you to interact with the internet. Ideally, Web 3 is a way for everyone to create experiences and coming together. So there's no intermediaries in a way. Metaverse, I define it as like how humans interact with these technologies and trends, how humans interact with Web3. And there's right now no one way of doing this thing. One thing that the industry have kind of set piece to, in a way, like how we're calling the metaverse, is something we call the 7 layers of the metaverse. If you think about, there's just so many layers of what we are calling metaverse. I want to go into the 7 ones that we have discussed in the industry, starting from experience. Experience is all about how do people kind of experience the metaverse through immersive social communities. So something that you saw in the Decentraland was the experience was different, right? Like you have an avatar, you're normally immersed in a world, and it's an evolution of what we used to be called internet in terms of like how we interact with the virtual worlds. And just experience, if we just take into consideration experience, it doesn't mean that it has to be virtual. Like you have to have VR. As you see, the Decentraland was just a desktop, and we didn't have VR capabilities, for example. And then we didn't have other kind of things that this one specifically had blockchain, which is decentralization, but others might not, like Fortnite or Roblox are not. So experience is all about community and immersiveness. Discovery is all about how people get into these worlds, meaning Discord, Telegram. There's other social communities that are forming around what we're calling Web3 that are not the typical ones that we have known before. So when brands come to me and say, hey, I want to get into the metaverse, and I'm like, have you talked to people in Discord? Do you even know what Discord is? And they don't. It's just a way of, you need to know.
What is Discord? Explain Discord.
Discord is basically like a Slack for people in Web3. If you know Slack in terms of your communities, it's just another social platform.
It's a chat room, if you will, for an old person.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's funny. It's like, it's not as different than other ones, but somehow the communities talking there. And Discord might disappear in a year. Maybe another one will come. But like, it's how people are discovering and talking about these experiences are in other platforms that are not the typical ones that we have known. So like when my brands are like, oh, let's go to Facebook and promote, Metaverse. I'm like, maybe that's not the best channel to promote.
Right. Well, I want to go back to this idea of decentralization. So you gave, like, there's an example of like game Fortnite, which is controlled by one company. So it's not decentralized at all. And then we were on Decentraland, that you're saying is decentralized. What does that mean? Who makes decisions if it's decentralized? How does that work?
So it's a hybrid right now between decentralization and centralization. And I think this is where the purists of Web3 come and discuss these things. Because yes, there's going to be companies that are going to own certain things, but how people make decisions is how you own tokens. So for example, in Ethereum, which is the blockchain that supports a lot of these metaverse experiences, when you own tokens, you also can say and have a vote on how things interact, how things evolve, the decisions that are being made. So the more you own, the more decision making you have. So it's not that the CEO will actually say this is what is going to happen. However, all of these go to another concept that we call DAO, decentralized organizations. And then these organizations are constructed differently, and how you make decisions and how you govern these companies are also very different. It's evolving. Nothing is right now perfect, let's say, but it all comes from the concept of crowdsourcing. So the crowd is smart enough to make decisions as a society and not as like one individual or just a group of individuals that are going to make all the decision making happen. So I don't know if you want to hone in a little bit more into it, Camren.
Well, I think it's important to note that a lot of these metaverse platforms do depend heavily on the investment of their communities, because a lot of it is user-generated content. And I think what decentralized metaverse platforms do is they give a little bit of that decision-making and that power back to the people. Because if a metaverse platform like Decentraland decides, we're not going to allow you to do this, they're probably going to lose people. So you lose creators and lose players. So it's in their benefit to try to strike that balance and give the ability to vote on making decisions on what happens with the platform to the community, while Decentraland proper, the company that owns the platform, still at the end of the day has to implement the changes to the platform, and they have to own that. So it's a little bit more of a collaborative process, whereas Fortnite is much more top down. They make a lot of decisions. They're running a business that's successful, and they're setting the how much creators get paid out for the experiences that they create. Decentralized metaverse platforms have this sort of overlapping circle where the digital items that are created there are also visible outside of the platform. The tokens that drive the currency inside of those metaverse platforms are also tradable outside. So they have to work together. Otherwise, their platform will collapse.
Wow, that's interesting. Fabrizio wants to know, can we party in the metaverse? I'm sure we can party in the
Definitely.
metaverse. Where do you go to party?
Let's see. Where do you go to party? There are lots of party places. Snoop Dogg's house. Snoop Dogg does host really great metaverse parties, but you have to have one of his NFTs to get in, I believe. So that's the
utility.
That's the utility, yeah.
Okay, so let me just parse that out a little bit. Snoop Dogg has a house. It's in Decentraland?
Snoop Dogg it loves the metaverse, I believe, because he has experiences in Sandbox, which is another decentralized metaverse, and Decentraland. And in Sandbox, he does have a unique party space that, if you manage to, when he was having his event, get one of his NFTs, or alternatively purchase that NFT on something like OpenSea, you can get access to that experience in Sandbox.
Okay. All right. Well, we're talking about NFTs. We should get into this a little bit more and maybe share some examples. So most basic NFT, non-fungible token. What does that mean?
So, I mean, NFTs are the digital item language of the blockchain. So digital goods, digital items have existed for forever. If you've played like any game or any MMO RPG, like World of Warcraft, digital items exist in those, and they have some properties that exist in those particular ecosystems. And what NFTs are is that, but on the blockchain. So that way, not just inside of those walled gardens can you see who owns what, but you can see broadly. So if I build a metaverse platform and I want to pull in, James, your NFTs that you may have purchased anywhere in the world on the Ethereum blockchain, I can choose to recognize those in my metaverse platform. So those NFTs are digital items that represent something in the spaces that choose to recognize them. So it's an NFT is an ownership of a digital item on a distributed platform.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. And how would you say they're different from cryptocurrencies? Because aren't both built on the blockchain?
Yeah. So cryptocurrencies are they're the economy of any blockchain. So when I mine Ethereum, or when I validate transactions on the Ethereum blockchain, you get paid out in a cryptocurrency. So it's a foundational this is how we run this business economy of the blockchain. And so tokens are built on top of that. And the great thing about tokens, where cryptocurrencies are just currency that you can use to trade as just a currency, tokens, and that includes NFTs, are executed on the blockchain as little bits of code. So let's say you have a digital item and you want to say, okay, every time I sell this digital item, or every time it's sold after that, I want to get 10%. So you can have a little bit of executable code that runs on the blockchain that follows that item as it goes through. Or this item can only be sold so many times before it's non-sellable. Or in the case of digital land, if you want to rent out your digital land to somebody, you would do so because land is also a token built on top of a blockchain. You can write code that says, I want this person to own this piece of land for 30 days. And then immediately after that 30 days, it comes back to me. And because of that, I'm going to take so much of their cryptocurrency as a payment for that. And all of that is wrapped inside of some logic, some code that is inside of the NFT as it transacts on the blockchain.
Wow, that's fascinating. When you were walking around that fashion district, I did notice a building that said "To Let," on the side. So, that's one of the things that we at JLL do in the real world. People are doing it in the virtual world.
What I think is fascinating too about this is is the concept of transparency. Like with technology, there's no way to be gray about it. If you rent something to someone, maybe they don't want to leave that place that you rent them, and then you need to go through all these law enforcement, probably, like all these problems that you might have. Whereas here you don't have to have, because as Camren said, it's immediate, it's technology, we all agreed on it, so it's executed right away. So there's no problems of just like not knowing what's going to happen, because everything is in a contract and everything is going to be executable. And I think that's such an interesting factor. A lot of my clients are like, I want to build in blockchain because of the transparency that brings. Mm-hmm. Because it is completely decentralized and every single person around me understands what they're getting into. So then it's respected and it's going to follow, and then it's going to actually execute that way. And I think that also brings a sense of responsibility and accountability for all the parties that are part of the network or part of these worlds, which I think is very good. And it gives you a sense of like, okay, we're all on this together in a good way.
Yeah, I love it. I love that utopian vision.
Mhm.
Maybe we could, Cameron, you can pull up some examples on the OpenSea platform of some NFTs, and we can talk about some specifics.
Sure. Let me.
And while you're doing that, let me ask you this, Nelly. We have this utopian vision, but are these places vulnerable to malicious hackers, or is it so, I don't know, because it's on the blockchain, it can't be hacked?
So this is the big question I think a lot of people ask. I think blockchain by default, it's so hard to hack because imagine millions of pieces of information distributed around the world. So like, for you to hack one piece of information, that's what we call nodes. Like, you see like every computer of every single person needs to be hacked at the same time for you to actually hack it. And that's virtually impossible. And that's what people say is unhackable. Now, how people store that information later, and how we are evolving as kind of the metaverse and what people are doing with that information is where it becomes probably liable. Like, what are you going to do with that information? That's a new company that is getting into the metaverse. So I want to be conscious of the blockchain itself. It's a very secure technology. However, how do you implement it, how you use it, it's also where you need to understand the technology well, so then it is actually secure and then your information is actually safe. And Cameron, I don't know if you want to tap in here also.
I mean, like a little bit of realism in here too. Like this is a new technology. So we have to understand that as we're building out on top of this, that there are going to be, there are clear, if you read the news at all, you can see that, some companies are hosting their own private blockchains. And so all of the nodes that are distributedly verifying transactions on that network. So I have a node here that's verifying transactions as my PC. If more than 51% of the nodes are compromised somehow, if there's a worm that gets out and compromises these computers, they could, in theory, take over a network. And so that's why, like, Ethereum is great because it's owned by so many people, and because there's a conscious effort to ensure its stability, and because by doing that, by hurting the integrity of a blockchain platform would hurt the overall value of the cryptocurrency itself. There aren't a lot of motives to destroy that. So what you see more of is people looking at individual token smart contracts and saying, is there a bug in this smart contract that I can validate? And that's where having a good technology company looking at your smart contract code to ensure that there aren't vulnerabilities there is important to have, as well as just scamming. Like, some people will say, hey, send me your private key, or like, will you sign this? And I'll, I'm your friend, or I am the sandbox, or I am Decentraland. And that's where at the individual level, there's a lot of stuff going on. But overall, blockchain networks as a whole, they're secure as long as the community is large enough and the network itself is not being controlled by any one particular party.
I gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, let's take a look at this is OpenSea, which is one platform you can use to buy, sell, auction
it's
NFTs.
A marketplace.
It's a marketplace.
It's what we call now an NFT marketplace, and one of the first ones, and one of the ones that actually created a lot of revenue. Out of the blue, it became like such an important player in the NFT space, in space, and then the Web3 space. But then you saw a lot of brands doing partnerships or creating their own collections. So Cameron, goes through this one.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with Gucci because it's a pretty well-known brand. They did a collaboration with somebody, and these are, relatively low utility NFTs. So these are images that are very artistic. That if you wanted to rep, hey, I own a Gucci NFT. This would be a way that you could do it. They're a little bit like art, where the value comes from the people who understand the value of it, a little bit of the novelty, a little bit of the utility. But they're also very beautiful pieces. So if you like digital art and you want to say you own an artist's digital something, like, this is a way that you could purchase these and get utility out of that. Speaking of Snoop Dogg, so actually, this is not the right one. This one here. So this was in Sandbox. Snoop Dogg had an experience that he created that was part of, I think, their season 2. where players could go in and play. They had to solve challenges. And whoever did that the best, whoever was the top challenge solver, received NFTs. And so, there are various NFTs that you can receive, but having the Snoopverse NFT grants you access utility in the future when he hosts parties in the metaverse. And Snoop Dogg would actually be there, and he would be as an avatar hanging out, and you would get some FaceTime or avatar time with Snoop Dogg. And so that's a cool utility for people who want to be a part of that group. And so it's not going to be, not everybody wants to hang out with Snoop Dogg, but for that community, for that new set of customers who maybe weren't familiar with the Snoop Dogg brand or really were and wanted to find ways to invest back into him, this is one way that they could do that while gaining utility as well in a virtual space.
I imagine this would be a great avenue for music artists to get, selling virtual merchandise. Are there a lot of artists out there doing that?
I would say deadmau5 is one of the big ones in the metaverse, because he's run the gamut as well. He's built experiences in Fortnite and Decentraland and Core, which is another centralized metaverse platform that's similar to Roblox. So he's one who's out there trying to create the experiences that help his brand, right? Like he wants to be somebody who's first and foremost in that space, selling NFTs of his, his giant mouse head, and having something like, I've also seen musicians trying to cut out sort of the middle platforms that they live on now, and being able to sell their music directly to consumers on blockchain, and giving them special access passes to whenever they have shows to get backstage, and leaning in those ways.
And actually, Globant is building his platform, deadmau5 platform. It's called Pixelin, and then it's all about music. So it's a very interesting space that is going to be just basically a metaverse for music and creatives. And it's specifically for that. So after him experimenting in different worlds of the metaverse, he had so many concerts that were in Decentraland, as you said, the Sandbox, and all of them. And you see the different experiences. I think he got information from that about testing, and then he was like, I want to create my own thing. Mm-hmm. And that's when he started actually thinking, what was the utility for it? Who were the people that were involved in my experiences? Who are people that are interesting to make money through a platform like this with me? And then he started creating something we call pixeling. So it's a very interesting space. I think he's one of the first ones that really saw the future in this, and the present, because he's really just doing it right now. And it's just a very interesting space. And I love how creators are looking at this and saying, hey, instead of me trying to go to a studio and, pray to God that they listen to my demo, I can just put it out there and figure it out if someone likes it and start, paying for it. So that's really the opportunity here.
Mm-hmm.
So
this you've got up, this is a Gap collaboration.
Yeah. So this is, I find this one interesting because they're selling NFTs, but they've gamified the ownership of them a little bit, where you now you have to collect multiple NFTs. You can fuse them together. This is a very a gamification centric, catch them all, evolve them Pokemon. But once you've fused them together and you now have this brand net new NFT, what is the additional utility that gives? And so that's what Gap has done. They have some NFTs here. They also have some digital items that they've put into, I think, to other metaverse platforms that you can as wearables. But everybody at this point they're trying different things to figure out where exactly their brand fits. What can they do that connects with a brand new audience or their existing audience, their existing customer, that readies them for whatever comes next. Because if you have NFTs that people are collecting and you decide to dump them into a metaverse, or you create a partnership with Fortnite, or not Fortnite, they're not on the blockchain, a partnership with Decentraland to recognize those NFTs and give them utility somehow inside of Decentraland, they're already ready to do it. And so poising your brand and poising your internal economy to be ready to intersect those is what Gap is doing and what a lot of other companies are doing as well.
Wow. And these, I would say these look like digital trading cards, but mm-hmm. the thing is you can fuse them and create new things and get new utilities. Oh, I want to ask you about pricing. So I'm seeing, $4, $17 on the other screen. When we're looking at Snoop Dogg, something was almost $700.
Mhm.
Like, is there a typical price, or is it kind of all over the place?
It's once again, it's supply and demand. So
Yeah.
certain collections will have floor price. I don't think this is an actual Snoop Dogg collection, but it's somebody who's maybe collaborating with him. But each of these collections have floor price. So Snoop Dogg's is less than half of one Ethereum. So I think that's about, what is that, 1,800 now these days.
Yeah.
But if we go to
Every day
something like
different.
So I like looking at Decentraland land prices because I feel like that's fascinating. And if you go here, you can see the floor price right now for the cheapest piece of land that you can purchase, an individual parcel, is 2.2. And that's determined by, what are people selling this for? What are people asking for it? Does it actually sell for that much? Probably, because you can see the activity here is pretty high. Lots of people are transacting digital land back and forth as an investment. And
So
some of these are like
2.2.
17.
Wow, 2.2 ETH is around $3,000? Is that right?
Well, let's look at what does anyone know offhand the price of Ethereum right now?
Coinbase.
Yeah, it's about 3,600 right now, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So
and we're going to get into this more because we're going to bring you back. We're going to do another on this, and I want to talk about this and the gas fees. We're not going to get into that today, but I want to learn more about that next time. But wow, that's amazing. So we're running out of time, unfortunately, but I don't want to end it right there. Let's end it with, like, let's say you're watching this right now. You're a brand. A lot of retailers enjoy our show. A lot of shopping center owners do as well. If you're working at one of those companies and you want to make a bet on the metaverse or Web3, what's the safe bet? What do you do?
I would start. I think one of the things that is, I think there are two main things that are obvious to me looking at the trajectory. I think the first one is having digital twins. So taking your brands, taking your individual items, taking your store locations or your physical locations and digitizing them. So creating 3D models of them. So that way, if you choose to push out into a metaverse like Decentraland or any of these other ones, you have a great starting point. You can just go straight, because to pull together a team, 3D modelers to build out like what's your 3D strategy takes time. And so having that ahead of time, it's worthwhile. You're going to end up using it one way or another, whether it's an NFT or in a metaverse space. And then I think second is thinking about the physical digital bridges that you want to build. So if you were to, let's say you have a loyalty point system, how might you connect that loyalty point system so that way you could use it as a gamification mechanism in a metaverse? Maybe you get paid out and gems can be converted to your loyalty points, or could you give a coupon out? What's going to drive people to your physical locations? Because as far as I know, the physical world will continue to exist. I have no doubts that that's going to stick around. So what are the ways that you can create sort of a back and forth between the digital world and the physical world? And what are those digital economies that you can connect your brand, your company into to really extract that value?
Yeah, and I think a lot of my clients have actually really, you touched, Camren, with the loyalty program. Loyalty programs are big and they're evolving. And every single of my client, no matter where, no matter who you are in the industry right now, you have some type of loyalty program. You have some type of incentives or motivators for your users to come back to your store, keep buying something, some service, some product, and then you have partnerships that you belong to. You have an ecosystem, and this is all about the metaverse. It's like, which ecosystem you're going to belong to. What is the value of your loyalty program? Anything that you give to your clients is something of value. How would you perceive that value compared to the loyalty program of your competitor or someone that is in the ecosystem? And then what can you purchase with those points? The point system is just another token, if you think about it. So if you want to maybe get into later a blockchain or start thinking about crypto for your store or your products and services, start thinking about your loyalty program. I think it's literally the basic of everything of an economy. What is the perceived value of that for your users? how can you enhance that value and that perception of the value? And then how can you enter these worlds? So like, what can you purchase with those points? And then maybe you go into worlds that are not decentralized yet, but then later you get into that. So really think about, I think that's why I like the 7 layers. If you think about those 7 layers, where do you want to start? Do you want to start in the experience side and really think about an immersive social experience? Do you want to think about the decentralization part of it and think about how blockchain could impact your business? Maybe think one of those layers, go deep down into it and see what could you actually do and what are you comfortable in terms of risk, because also you need to figure it out. All of this is new. So what risk do you are willing to take to actually make leeway there and become even a little bit famous? Because a lot of them, and as you can see, a lot of these companies are just doing disruptive digital campaigns. Maybe they're just doing something cool in the metaverse that it doesn't last forever, but it's like one of those things that it will make voice. People will really hear your brand and you start actually making customers come to your store more. So just think smartly about which layers do you think you want to impact in the metaverse and where do you think you can start like dabbing into?
I love it because every retailer and now many shopping centers have loyalty programs. And that seems like that could be an extension of a metaverse program. Well, we have questions from the audience. Let's see if we can answer a few of these. Mariano asks, how do you consider the maturity of companies that could bring their business, services, goods, etc., to metaverse? Do you think they are ready? Or maybe it could demand more time, maybe the next 2 or 3 years. So I guess, how mature does a company need to be to bring their goods and services to the metaverse?
So I think that right now there are multiple entry points that we're seeing a lot with our clients, and that is, as simple as you want to, like, Gap is creating an NFT. Like the investment to do that is not too high. You need some IT folks, and you need to write a little bit, maybe a smart contract in there. But the entry point for that could be anybody, right? Like, what do you want to have that digital item out there? You can do that. For those who want to invest in an experience, maybe a little bit more mature. If you were going to build something in in Decentraland, build a physical space, or build like a true gaming experience inside of something like Core Roblox, doing something like that. Maybe you want to ensure that you have the good ecosystem to drive people from the digital spaces to the physical spaces, loyalty programs, those kinds of things. And then some brands, they have enough power that they maybe should build their own metaverse platform. And they should start bringing in their own creators, like deadmau5 is doing. He has enough pull and he has enough a captive audience that he could build a community around that and create a self-sustaining metaverse platform that could allow him to continue to sell and build on top of that.
So two questions here from Fabrizio. One is, how will agencies transition to the metaverse? And I guess we're talking about advertising agencies. And then the other question, will brand presentations happen in the metaverse? Any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, I think this is not new. I think agencies are becoming more and more techie. I think, and this is always been like an integration. I think, consulting companies by default, the ones that are very numbers driven, wanted to become more techie too, because they want to understand the impact of technology in the businesses and how the transformation actually will take and impact really the ROI of anything that you do right now. It was before a tool and enabler. Now it's really like the driven force of a lot of this transformation. Technology companies are become more agency experience too, because as a technology company at default, Globant, I think before our first ages, we are 19 years living, but the first year probably was our clients giving us requirements and we will just build something good for you. But now they're asking us, hey, I want to understand the experience. I want to understand my brand, how this will look here. And then we do a lot of partnerships with agencies to figure that out. But agencies need to understand technology also, because then again, it will just be something beautiful, but not into utility. It won't be functional and you don't even know how to build it. So I think it really has to come together. You need to understand the technology a lot more. And in terms of presentations, yes, I think Camren and I have been already in some presentations where we try to do it in some space in the metaverse, it's virtual or not. And then I think it's going to become more fun. to do it that way too. I think, we are a little over with the Zoom calls, and I think we want to do something, at least if it's virtual, something that is exciting, that maybe I don't have to be sitting down. Maybe I float and then we can do something different. I think it's all about our creative brain. How do we apply what we know and the technologies that exist in our own good? So we can do something better. We can do something more fun. So it's just exploring. It's like being kids again. How curious are you? Just experiment with technologies and figure out what works for your company.
Okay, I got one more question before we go. So it seems to me the way you access these different places in the metaverse is through this screen, this computer screen. But I was promised virtual reality, right? I want goggles. I want Ready Player One. I want to feel like I'm on the holodeck and on Star Trek. So when is that happening? I mean, are clients saying, hey, let's build stuff that people can access through VR goggles, or is that still down the road?
So I think that, as Nelly was saying earlier, we have these components that compose sort of like the perfect metaverse, which doesn't exist yet. And all of those technologies are evolving at different paces, and companies metaverse platforms are pulling together different technologies to build specific experiences. But the VR metaverse experiences already exist. I mean, Meta is trying to build it with Horizon Worlds. They're also trying to build a workplace metaverse. So it's really this convergence of technology that's happening very slowly. Right now, I would argue there's a friction problem with VR where people want to be in it, but the friction to come in and out of it and to like be playing, but then go answer the door, it's a little bit higher than the average consumer wants. And once we get to the point of digitizing VR, collapsing it a bit with augmented reality, I think that's where you'll start to see much more adoption across the board in these metaverse platforms. Once, like how phones exist in our pockets now, and we feel naked whenever we leave home without them. I think that once AR is like near to your face, VR is near to your face, and it's a little bit transparent to you. That's at that point we'll start to see a tipping point, and we'll see more and more experiences that are, the snow crash level of immersion, where you can pop in and out, and the divides between the digital and the physical become blurred.
Yeah, and these wearables too. Like I think people were talking about chips in your brain. I don't think that's actually that far from reality. I think it's funny how we see the evolution of these technologies. We can say slow or fast depending on what, you had to see the timeline of the growth of technology was just these past 5 years, or even just COVID in 2 years. All these things that change. So I think we might jump from like a headset that is heavy and annoying to wear sometimes to like nothing. That might be the shift, or it might be something that is just glasses that, it's just much better for you to like get in and out. So it might not be what we see now as VR. It might actually evolve to something completely different. And that's what's so interesting. What's cool, and I think everyone should know this, because I think it's now a trigger point for me. Like every time we talk about metaverse, everyone has the VR headset as a picture. And I'm like, nope, actually the worlds that have VR access don't have blockchain as a capability. And the blockchain worlds don't have VR capabilities yet. So those two worlds haven't intersect yet. That doesn't mean that they're not going to, because as we were saying, the purest of the metaverses have all of these things together. So I think we're evolving towards that, but there's no one world yet that has all of these things together. So that's why I think people need to understand, like, don't try to expect everything to come. I want this world that it's like, I want to buy NFTs and like do this. Like, we're not there yet, but I think the whole ecosystem is working very rapidly to try to get there somehow.
I gotcha. So when we think about VR, goggles and stuff, that's really not even part of this conversation yet. That's still to come. Okay. So Nelly and Camren, you're going to be back Thursday, June 30th at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific for part 2, where we're going to be talking about how to buy and why you would want to buy and what you do with digital real estate in the metaverse. So I guess we're going to talk about Decentraland, but there's more than just that. There's Sandbox. Where are we going to go for that conversation?
So I think Decentraland's the best as sort of the point in the future that, you can buy land and you can put whatever you want on it. Some of these other platforms are a little bit more limiting. I think Decentraland's a great place to start because it shows you that when you buy digital land and you have neighbors that you can walk to, all of the dynamics that happen in these digital spaces where there's a continuity of the land around you. Because traditionally in digital spaces, there are servers that you go to and you join, like chat rooms, and then you leave one and you don't move between them. You can't see the other from the one you were just in. And so those dynamics inside of Decentraland are fascinating. So we'll dive deep into what it looks like to purchase land through Decentraland, which is very similar to other platforms, as well as what are some of the things you can build on top of it.
I love it. And my world is retail real estate in the real world. So it's like I'm almost relearning how that's done in a new universe. So that's going to be June.
Digital landlord very soon.
All right. So that's going to be June 30th. So Camren and Nelly, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back then.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. And for folks who are watching, you can download our latest for folks who are watching, you can download our latest research reports at jll.com. Go to Trends and Insights. They're all available for free to download. We also do a podcast that is totally separate from this. It is an audio podcast. It is called Where We Buy. Every week, we do 1 or 2 episodes with in-depth conversations about all kinds of stuff. Everything from, Metaverse to, new shopping centers to new retailers. Use whatever podcast app you like to search for Where We Buy, or you can find us on the web at wherewebuy.show. If you're watching right now on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you want to find us on YouTube, go to everythingweknow.show. That'll take you to where we're at on YouTube. But when you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you're reminded of when a new show is up. And the best place to watch us, where I think more people than anywhere else watch, is on LinkedIn Live. And the way to know when new LinkedIn Live episodes come out is by following JLL Retail on LinkedIn Live. So like I said, we're going to be back again next Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, everythingweknow.show or the JLL Retail LinkedIn page. And if you want to learn more about everything we know about retail, you can join us again here next week.